The war had finally ended. After 10 long years of endless fighting among the stars, the galaxy had gone quiet. The skies that once burned with fire and explosions now looked calm, filled with soft light from faraway suns. The soldiers who survived returned to their homes carrying stories that would be told for centuries. Among them was one who carried more than victory. She carried sorrow. She was Queen Alindra of Verilia, ruler of 1,000 worlds and commander of the Royal Armada. Her people called her the Queen of the Silver Crown, for her eyes shimmered like liquid light and her armor gleamed even in darkness. She had led her fleet through storms of plasma and oceans of death, standing firm when empires fell. Now she was coming home to a silent world that did not feel like home anymore. Her ship descended through the purple clouds of her capital planet, Verilia Prime. Towers of glass and stone rose from the surface like frozen waves. Millions had gathered to welcome her back. Flags shimmered in the wind, choirs sang in her honor, and golden petals fell from the sky. But inside the queen's heart there was no music. She stood at the balcony of her royal cruiser, watching the celebrations below. Her lips did not move and her eyes did not shine. He is not here, she thought. The one who promised to meet me again? He is not here. 7 years ago, during the darkest time of the war, her ship had been ambushed near the Hellion Rift. She had been young, then proud and patient and full of dreams. Her fleet was surrounded, her guards dead, her engines burning. She had accepted death. But then, through the wreckage, a strange craft had appeared, a Terran fighter, smaller than her escape pod. It carried the symbol of a blue planet she had only heard about, Earth. The human pilot had fought like a storm. He had flown straight into the enemy line to reach her. When her escape hatch jammed, he tore it open with his own hands. His name was Captain Aaron, a man of few words and quiet eyes. He had carried her out of the fire, patched her wounds, and shared his rations, even when he had none left for himself. For 3 days, they hid together on a ruined moon, speaking in broken language and shared silence. Before they parted, he had said one simple thing: when the war ends, I'll come find you again. And she had believed him. Through every battle, through every loss, that promise had been her strength. But the war had ended, and he was nowhere to be found. When the Queen's ship landed, her people cheered so loudly the mountains echoed. Ministers bowed, soldiers saluted, and the royal choir sang her name. But Alindra felt like a shadow moving through light. Every smile she gave was empty, every word rehearsed. That night, she sat alone in a private chamber, surrounded by trophies of victory banners, medals, weapons, all symbols of a war that had cost too much. Her advisor, High Marshal Selvern, entered quietly. "Your Majesty," he said, "the Council wishes to begin peace talks with the remaining human colonies." "Shall I prepare the documents?" She looked up. "Do the humans still hold colonies near our borders?" "Some," he replied, "but they have withdrawn from most of the galaxy. Their fleets returned to defend their homeworld. No messages have been exchanged since the armistice." Her voice softened. "So Earth is silent." Selvern bowed his head. "Yes, my queen, it seems so." The queen turned to the window where stars stretched across the sky like forgotten fires. "Then we will send one," she said at last. "A message to their world. I must know if Captain Aaron lives." The Marshal hesitated. "Forgive me, Your Majesty, but that name belongs to a soldier of a foreign race." "Why would the Queen herself?" She raised her hand, stopping him. "Because I owe him my life, and because I gave him my trust." Selvern lowered his gaze. "As you wish." Weeks passed, but there was no answer from Earth. The message went through every relay station and communication hub, but none reached the humans. Some said their technology had gone dark. Others said they had sealed themselves off from the galaxy forever. Each night, Alindra waited by the crystal console in her chamber, hoping for a signal. The machine glowed, hummed, and then fell silent. No human voice ever came through. One evening, she stood at the balcony again, watching the twin moons rise. The wind carried the scent of iron and rain. She thought of Aaron's rough voice, his calm eyes, the warmth of his hand when he had helped her climb from the burning wreck. The galaxy called her a queen. She felt like a ghost. The stars that once obeyed her now looked like strangers. Finally, she made a decision. "Prepare my ship," she told her guards. "We are leaving." Selvern looked startled. "Leaving, Your Majesty?" The council will understand," she said coldly. "There is something I must find beyond their halls of comfort." "Where will you go?" "To the border, where humans once lived." The Queen's journey took her far beyond her empire. She traveled through empty systems where planets drifted like broken pearls. Once these sectors were alive with trade and laughter, now they were silent. The war had left scars that light could not heal. Her escort was small, a handful of loyal soldiers and one old navigator named Terran who had served her since she was a child. Terran's voice cracked with age, but his heart remained strong. "My queen," he said as their ship crossed the red nebula of Neareth, "are you sure this is wise? The humans are said to fear us now. They may not welcome you." Alindra smiled faintly. "I do not seek their welcome, old friend. I seek the truth." Days turned into weeks. The ship drifted through ruins of space stations, shattered satellites, and frozen ships. All human. Alindra often stood in silence before their remains, wondering what stories these ghosts could tell. Then, at the edge of a dying system, Terran found something. "Your Majesty," he called, his wrinkled hands trembling as he pointed at the radar screen. "There is a beacon here. It carries a Terran code." The Queen's heart skipped. How old? 17 years, maybe more, but still active. Set a course. The beacon led them to a small desert moon circling a cold sun. The surface was covered with dust and cracked rock. They landed near a canyon where the signal was strongest. The Queen stepped down from her ship, her cloak flowing behind her, boots sinking into soft dust. The air was thin, dry, almost painful to breathe. They found the beacon among the ruins of a human outpost. Trusted metal, broken towers, shattered glass. The signal light blinked weakly. On the side of the beacon, engraved under the dust, were words in old Terran letters. "Outpost E12, property of the Terran Defense Corps." Alindra touched the letters with her gloved fingers. This was theirs. Terran nodded. "The place is ancient, but someone maintained the beacon. Look, these power cells are new." The Queen's pulse quickened. "Someone is here." They explored the ruins until the suns began to set. The sky turned orange, then red. Her soldiers set up lamps around the beacon while she walked ahead, drawn by a faint flicker in the distance. At the top of a hill, she saw a small campfire burning weakly against the wind. Her heart pounded. She stepped closer, her soldiers following at a distance. Beside the fire sat a figure in a dark coat. His hair was gray, his face lined, his body thin but strong. He turned his head slowly, as if sensing her long before he saw her. When his eyes met hers, the world seemed to stop. "Human," she whispered. He stood up, straight and steady, despite his age. His voice was rough from years of silence. "Your Majesty," he said softly, with a small, tired smile. "You came." The Queen froze. "Aaron?" He nodded once. "It's been a long time." She could not move. For years, she had imagined this moment, how she would smile, how she would thank him, how the stars would seem brighter. But now all those words vanished. She took a slow step forward, her throat tight. You never answered my calls." "There were no calls," he said quietly. "The Union fell apart. Earth closed its gates. We lost contact with everyone. Then you were trapped here." He nodded again. "After the war ended, our ships were recalled. But someone had to stay behind to make sure the Varelian borders were safe. I volunteered." Her eyes widened. "You've stayed? All this time?" He gave a faint smile. "A promise is a promise." For a moment, the Queen felt the weight of every year she had spent searching. Her chest tightened, her vision blurred. She had led fleets and conquered worlds, yet no victory had ever felt as heavy as this one. "You waited for me," she whispered. Aaron shrugged slightly. "Didn't have anywhere else to go?" She wanted to laugh, but her voice trembled. "After all the battles, after all the blood, this is where you stayed." He looked at the setting sun. It's quiet here. The machines still work. The stars haven't left me yet. She stepped closer. Close enough to see the faint scars on his hands, the same hands that once pulled her from a burning wreck. Her soldiers waited behind her, unsure whether to move, but she ignored them. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked like glass. Have you forsaken me, human? Aaron blinked slowly, then smiled with sadness in his eyes. Forsaken you? He said. No, Your Majesty. I stayed because I thought you were gone. The wind blew across the canyon, carrying the ashes of the dying fire. The queen closed her eyes. The ache that had lived in her heart for 7 long years melted away, placed by something deeper. Peace. Night fell over the desert moon. The queen ordered her guards to camp near the ship, while she remained by the fire with the human who had once saved her. They spoke for hours about the war, about the lives they lost, about the strange quiet that followed victory. Alindra listened to his stories, the small details of survival. The first light of dawn spread across the dusty moon like a promise. The air shimmered faintly, touching the ruins with soft gold. Queen Alindra stood beside Aaron's old camp, watching the sunlight fall over the broken towers and faded flags. The world around them was silent, yet her mind was loud with thoughts. The man before her had waited alone through years of emptiness. He had guarded a dead world because of a promise. And now that she was here, she felt a strange ache in her chest, feeling she had almost forgotten. Gratitude. Aaron was packing his few belongings. Moving slowly, each motion careful and tired, the queen noticed how his hand shook when he lifted the metal canister. He had grown older, his strength dulled, but his spirit remained. You have survived here all these years, she said softly. Without command, without orders. Why? He smiled faintly. Someone had to watch the stars. Someone had to believe they still mattered. She looked at him for a long moment, then spoke with quiet authority. You will not stay here anymore. You are coming with me. He stopped and turned toward her. With you? To your world? Yes, she said. You saved my life once. Now I will return the favor. You will not die on this empty moon. Aaron hesitated. Your people might not welcome a human. Then they will learn, she replied firmly. They will learn what one human's courage is worth. By noon, her ship lifted off from the surface, leaving the old campfire and rusted machines behind. From orbit, the desert moon looked small and quiet, like a forgotten memory. Alindra stood by the viewing window as Aaron sat nearby. Watching the stars blur past, he had not been inside a spacecraft for years. The hum of engines, the smell of clean air, the faint vibration of power, it felt strange but comforting. Does it feel different? She asked, noticing his quiet gaze. Feels alive, he said simply. I'd forgotten what that was like. For a long while, neither spoke. The silence between them was not heavy. It was peaceful. Finally, Alindra broke it. When I returned home after the war, they called me savior. But I felt nothing. All the worlds I freed, all the victories I won, they meant little without. Without understanding why we fought at all. Aaron nodded slowly. War does that. Takes everything and gives back nothing. She turned toward him. But you held on to a promise. Why? He thought for a moment. Because you were kind, he said. You treated me like an equal when everyone else saw me as strange. You believed me when I said I'd come back. I couldn't let that die. Her heart stirred. It had been years since anyone had spoken to her without fear or formality. You're still the same, she said softly. Still foolish? Still brave? He smiled. That's humans for you. When they reached Verelia Prime, the Queen's palace glittered under the twin suns. It was a world of crystal towers and silver rivers where gravity fields shaped the air itself. The ship landed in the royal courtyard, where dozens of soldiers waited. As the ramp lowered, the Queen stepped out first. The guards bowed deeply. But when Aaron followed her, whispers rose among them. A creature from a distant planet was walking beside their queen. High Marshal Selvern appeared, his face pale. Your Majesty, he exclaimed, bowing quickly. We feared for your safety. You left without protection, and now you return with—" His eyes moved to Aaron. "With this?" "This," she said firmly, "is Captain Aaron Holt of the Terran Defense Corps. The man who saved my life during the war. You will treat him as you treat me." Selvern froze. "Of course, my queen," he said, though his tone trembled. Aaron bowed slightly, uncomfortable with the attention. "I'm no captain anymore, ma'am. Just a man who stayed too long in the wrong place." But Alindra shook her head. "No, Aaron Holt, you are proof that loyalty can outlive empires." Inside the palace, the queen arranged a private chamber for him, overlooking the gardens. It was more beautiful than anything he had seen in year trees that glowed faintly at night. Birds with crystal feathers, streams that sang like music. Yet he felt uneasy. He was an outsider here. That night, he stood on the balcony, staring at the stars. He could see the same constellations he had counted from his lonely moon. They looked different now, closer, brighter. He heard footsteps behind him. The queen joined him, her silver cloak flowing softly in the wind. "Can you sleep?" she asked. He shook his head. "Too quiet. I'm not used to comfort anymore." She smiled gently. "My people think silence is peace. But you remind me that silence can also mean loneliness." He turned to her. "And you, Queen Alindra? You've got everything Palace's armies, stars that obey your command. Yet you sound lonely too." She met his gaze. "Perhaps I am," she admitted. "For all my victories, I never had what you had, someone to believe in." They stood together, silent, watching a comet pass across the horizon. In that moment, the distance between alien and human vanished. They were just two souls, scarred by war and time, sharing the same sky. Days passed. The queen began to rebuild her empire with a new vision. She wanted peace, not just treaties, but understanding. She held council meetings, speaking of unity between humans and Varelians. Her advisors argued. Some feared humans. Some hated them for abandoning the alliance. But she silenced them with one line. "One human's loyalty has proven more powerful than all our fleets." Aaron, meanwhile, spent his time in the gardens, repairing old machines left from the war. Servants often watched him from afar, whispering about the strange creature who worked with his hands instead of servants. But over time, their curiosity softened into respect. One evening, a young Varelian child approached him shyly and offered him a small glowing flower. "My mother says you were the one who waited," she said. Aaron smiled kindly. "I suppose I am," the girl smiled back. "Then you must be very brave." He laughed softly. "Maybe just very stubborn." The queen saw this from her balcony and felt something warm stir inside her. For years, her palace had been a place of pride and distance. But now, laughter echoed again within its walls. Not everyone was happy. Some nobles saw the human as a threat to tradition. One night, during a council meeting, a noble spoke openly. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing, "you honor this human too much. He is not one of us." His kind brought chaos to the stars. The queen rose slowly, her presence filling the hall. "You are wrong," she said. "Humans brought hope when we had none. They fought beside us when no one else dared. This one man's faith outlasted the war itself. If you cannot see that, then you are blind." The hall fell silent. No one dared speak again. After the meeting, Aaron found her standing alone in the corridor, her face calm, but her hands trembling slightly. "You didn't have to defend me," he said quietly. "I don't belong here." She turned to him sharply. "You belong wherever loyalty and courage are honored. And that is here." He smiled faintly. "You always did know how to argue." She looked at him for a long moment. "And you always knew how to stay." Weeks became months. Slowly, peace began to spread. The humans who had survived on scattered colonies started to answer Varelian signals again. Ships that once carried weapons now carried messages of trade and friendship. The queen had kept her promise. She was rebuilding trust. One word at a time. Aaron often helped translate old Terran systems and codes, his knowledge bridging the gap between their worlds. He became a symbol among both species, the watcher who waited. One evening, as the queen visited him in the communication chamber, She saw him smiling at the glowing console. "What is it?" she asked. He looked up, eyes shining. "It's from Earth," he said. "They heard your message. They want to reopen contact." Her eyes widened. For years, she had hoped for this moment. "Then it begins," Aaron nodded. "It begins." That night, the Queen held a great gathering in the palace courtyard. Thousands attended the first official peace assembly between humans and Virulence since the war. Holograms projected the Earth's blue oceans above the courtyard. And a choir sang in both languages. Aaron stood beside her, dressed in ceremonial armor provided by her royal smiths. It fit him awkwardly, but the Queen smiled when she saw him. "You clean up well, Captain Holt," she teased softly. He chuckled. "I was a soldier once. Guess it still shows." As the ceremony began, the Queen addressed the crowd. Her voice was clear and strong, echoing across the crystal walls. "Once, I believed peace was built by power. I was wrong. Peace is built by promises and the courage to keep them. One man waited for me when the galaxy forgot. One human guarded our border when empires fell. Because of that, our stars shine together again." The crowd cheered, their voices rising like thunder. For the first time in generations, humans and Virelians stood side by side, not as conquerors or enemies, but as allies. When the celebration ended, the Queen walked with Aaron through the quiet palace gardens. Fireflies glowed softly in the air. She looked at him and said, "Do you regret staying behind all those years?" He thought for a moment, then shook his head. "No, I think. It was meant to be. If I hadn't stayed, maybe you'd never have come." She smiled gently. "Then perhaps the stars planned this after all," laughed. "Or maybe we just got lucky." They stopped near the fountain, where the water shimmered like silver light. The Queen turned to him, her eyes bright but soft. "You've given me something I had forgotten, Aaron. What's that?" "Faith," she said simply. "Not in empires, not in victory, but in people." He looked at her quietly. "You gave me the same thing." For a moment, neither spoke.